welcome to another interview for the EIC Scaling Club. My name is Robin Wouters from TechEU, and I'm delighted to be joined here today by Massimo Portincaso. I'm guessing that's an Italian name. Are you from Italy?
Yes, I am, indeed. I'm from
There you
Milan.
go. So originally from Italy, Massimo Portincaso has worn many hats already throughout his career, but I'm delighted to have him share more about sort of what's in the past, but also what comes next. So maybe let's start from the top. Who are you? What's your background?
I'm right now I'm an entrepreneur. I just founded a company to make biomanufacturing economically viable. But in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, I've been spending a lot of time in the deep tech space, writing about it. While I was at BCG, where I co-founded and co-led the deep tech practice, then decided to really practice what I was talking about and entered the space in 2021. I invested in a few companies, created one, which is Officina Bio. During this whole journey, I was also part of the Hello Tomorrow, was helping the Hello Tomorrow, was not part of it. I was helping the Hello Tomorrow community and its founder. Then I also started my own company, Deepwave Ventures, that contributed to the first version of the EIC Scaling Up effort. We wrote for that the blueprint for scaling up deep tech companies in Europe. And I thought it was now the point in time to put into practice all that I learned and move from the theory of deep tech to the practice of deep tech, and addressing one of the biggest bottleneck in the industrial biotech synthetic biology space by creating the industrial and data backbone to make that industry economically viable, which is not today, which is a little bit of the summary of all the challenges that deep tech has, starting from funding to infrastructure to technology risk, engineering risk, and all of those things together.
Great. Well, we're going to talk more about that and your journey as well. But I do want to go back to sort of the BCG days, because you mentioned you were sort of leading the deep tech efforts there. But I'm guessing you spent quite a good chunk of your career at BCG. Was deep tech already a term when you started, or did it become a term while you were there?
No, it was not. It was not at all. And actually, normally when I introduce myself to investor, I usually say that I'm a recovery management consultant after 20 years at BCG. No, the term didn't exist back then. And I just happened to learn about it because I was wearing a marketing hat there as well. And one of the partnerships that we had was with Hello Tomorrow. It was really nascent. Hello Tomorrow was a small thing in 2016, I think. And nobody was really speaking about deep tech. It was the time where everybody was still pushing app to, I don't know, buy pet food online and that kind of stuff. And this group of people there really said, guys, there is a different world out there that we need to push, that startup can really change the world with technology and science. And this fascinated me a lot. I remember the first time somebody said, "You have heard about deep tech?" And I said, "What is deep tech?" It was really 2016, and nobody's ever spoken about it. And ultimately, it was not Hello Tomorrow who created the term, but I think Hello Tomorrow contributed massively to popularizing the term and creating the community and making the topic. Also, thanks to the work that they did with BCG and the publication of the reports that we had. Then now everybody's talking about deep tech so much. That I'm already thinking about what's coming next after deep tech. And I think the next phase of deep tech is what I call the neo-industrials. It's a new phase that is coming after the deep tech phase. That's something I deeply believe in.
I'm going to pick your brain on that in a minute. But maybe, so you joined Hello Tomorrow basically as chairman of the advisory board. Of course, Hello Tomorrow being a valued partner of the EIC Scaling Club itself. When you were chairing that advisory board, did you already know sort of, this is going to be the next phase in my career path? I'm probably going to start my own deep tech company, invest, advise other companies in this space?
Yeah, very much so. And, my chair title is not an operative one. And ultimately, my goal was to help Hello Tomorrow as much as I could from the outside, because I really believe in their mission. And the team there has been doing a fantastic, amazing job. I know the CEO has been really driving these. and it's quite impressive what they've built. And for me, it was really a way to help as much as I can. But they have been doing most of it. I've been really marginal, very marginal in the effort and helping where I could. But they have been doing the job and creating this incredible community, which is the Hello Tomorrow community.
Yeah, I think that's right, and you're being typically modest, which is very, very European of you. But of course, you played your role, and then Hello Tomorrow. After that, sort of during that, I guess came EIC Scaling Up. For those who don't know, EIC Scaling Club has a predecessor in terms of EIC Scaling Up, which was ultimately the same goal to help European deep tech companies scale up more efficiently. What are some of the learnings you took from that initiative?
Many. It was good to look under the hood and really realize how difficult it is to build those companies in Europe altogether. It is difficult overall, but Europe has a lot of challenges. And I wrote a piece about it in the introduction to the report that the Swedish team put together after a great conference in June. And while the potential is there, I am right now skeptical somehow to the capacity of Europe to really fulfill the promise. And I'm really trying to contribute as much as I can to that. But it's not easy, and there are a lot of structural issues. Although I have to say, what really struck me was the mentality of investors in Europe. That was something that really, at the beginning when I was writing another report a few years back, somebody told in one interview, say, look, the classical American VCs is going to come into the meeting with you, and if it is a promising company, it's going to say, how much can you accelerate? Can you make it better, bigger if I give you more money? And how fast can you go? And the classical European investor will tell you, okay, how can we minimize the risk? How can we reduce the size of the ticket? And I thought back then that people were exaggerating that. But when I went through the funding process, I really experienced that one-to-one. And it's really a matter of ambition. I remember the Thomas Nauda, the senior partner at McKinsey at the same conference in Sweden, talking about, are you willing to have unreasonable ambition to be able to drive those things? And this is lacking. And the problem is that the one thing that I learned is that the system is really calibrated to beat any kind of unreasonable ambition that you have out of you, which has also drawbacks. It's not always good. I mean, then because of that, you end up with the WeWork of this world, believing into that. So you need a good middle ground, but I think we're definitely too much on the side of compressing the aspirations and the ambition, which is make things difficult. And then there are a lot of structural problems in terms of availability of capital, understanding. And this is another thing that I really realized in the process, is that it's very difficult to be an investor in this space, because you really need to understand both the technology and the market. And there are not that many people that can do that. And if you look at, for instance, biotech, it took 40 years to have an ecosystem that understands the technology, the science, and the market to become really a self-sufficient piece. And we are just at the beginning of this for many things, and you start seeing specialization in some of the area, but you really need the understanding of the industry to be able to invest in there. And this is a bit of a problem, because a lot of the background of the investors in Europe is a financial one, less of a technical one, and this creates a bit of an obstacle to the normal development of things, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's slowly changing, but a long, long way to go in Europe. I agree. It doesn't hurt to be skeptical or critical. There are structural problems that need to be addressed. But long term, do you think Europe has a chance to play a leading role in deep tech if these structural issues are addressed?
The chance, it has the chance for sure, because it has fantastic precondition to do that. Great talent, great universities, an industrial backbone, an industrial experience that is completely gone in the US. So theoretically, yes, it's going to be tough. Would I bet my money on it? No, but I'm betting. On the one side, I'm not betting on it. On the other side, I'm betting on it because I'm doing it right now. And out
Right.
of all the countries, I'm building a company out of Italy, which is not really paradise for startup. But I think because of the potential of the existing industrial background to do what we want to do, I think Europe has a chance. But it's not a slam dunk.
Yeah. For sure not. You said your Deepwave Ventures was sort of a transition into starting your own company, but you did have that opportunity to actually make investments on your own, to be the type of investors that we really need in Europe, right? Because you have knowledge of the market, you know, sort of both sides of the coin as an entrepreneur. Was that not the long-term ambition to become one of these, you know, really forward-looking investors in Europe?
Maybe one day, but I think I really didn't know what I was doing. This is the reason why when I left BCG, I actually wanted to become an investor, and I knew that I didn't know what it meant to invest, and that's why I spent time in the market. So for me, Deepwave was a learning phase more than anything else, and actually I came out of it understanding that I much prefer to ask people to give me money to do stuff instead of asking people to give me money to give that money to other people to do stuff. So that was a very clear learning out of that. But the other thing is really I understood what it takes to invest, and you know, seeing from the outside, I thought, oh, you know, you need to have the intuition and so on. There is a lot more that goes into that. And I definitely didn't have the understanding of the market. After 2 years, I had it, but when I started, I didn't. And then because I much prefer to do the stuff, I started creating what I'm creating. But I think it's also necessary because the moment you invest in this space and the moment you invest in deep tech, the moment you invest in atoms and bits, I think the whole game of investing is shifting. Meaning that in the classical world that we had over the last 20 years, it was all, and it's still going to be a lot about power law and basically placing many bets. And, you know, every company should be able to return the fund. And, you know, you have the outlier driving the returns and all of those things. But you don't need to have a systemic view of where the market is going. You can really place single bets. And I think that what is happening now in this new wave of investing requires the elevation of the thesis to a different level so that the investor itself becomes almost like a startup with a strong thesis that needs to prove its thesis by bringing together the right bets in the market and advancing it. And I think this is going to be an important shift that is going to happen. So yes, you're going to have still some power law, but I think the importance and the impact of power law is going to be reduced because it's a different, it's a very different setup and the way you look at it. So the portfolio part becomes really a strategic piece where you need to fulfill your vision of where the market is going to be and also possibly generating synergies across the portfolio companies. So it's a very, very different role that you have compared to the classical, okay, we place many bets and then one is going to return the fund. One or two are going to return the fund.
Yeah, definitely the nature of investing in this space is also changing quite drastically. So tell us more about Arsenale. You're building something quite ambitious, so I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, our goal is to make the industrial biotech space economically viable. It has all the, ideally, if you look at it from the outside, you could think that this can really change the world. You can really use nature to produce. McKinsey says 60% of what can be produced. But basically, everything that contains carbon, you can basically produce utilizing nature. And The problem is that despite this huge potential, the industry is not economically viable, and nobody, or very, very, very few companies have ever made money by that. And there are many reasons for that. It's just that, it's coming from the biopharma space with very different cost structure and so on. And with Arsenale, what we're trying to do is we are working to bring down the cost of industrial biotech by one order of magnitude, to enable what I call the Bessemer moment for industrial biotech, which is with steel in the mid-19th century. Steel was a known product, the same way industrial synthetic biology is known today, and precision fermentation is also known today, but nobody was using steel because it was simply too expensive, the same way industrial biotech is today. And Mr. Bessemer came and he deliberately worked on the process, not on the product, and brought down the cost of a ton of steel from 40 pounds to 6 pounds. And by doing so, it made steel available for a lot of application. And then all of a sudden, from being known but no use, steel became the ubiquitous material of the Industrial Revolution. And we are aspiring to drive that Bessemer moment for synthetic biology or industrial biotech, in which we bring down the cost from the hundreds in the tens of dollars per kilogram, and then we make a whole wealth of product economically viable. Today are not. But it's not only doing this, it's also about building the infrastructure, building the hardware, the industrial and the data backbone to be able to deploy this capacity. Because one other problem that you have is that today those facilities cost hundreds of millions, take years to be built, and we really want to quickly deploy this capacity and make it available fast at a completely different price point, so that we can really drive this transition. Because if you talk to a lot of industrial companies, a lot of consumer companies, they want to go from petrochemical to bio-based or biomanufacture, but the supply chain is not there. And they don't need only a couple of 100 kilograms, they need thousands of tons of whatever you're producing. So you need to redo these industrial backbone. And this is why I say after deep tech, what comes now is the neo-industrials phase, in which is not only about the technology, but it's about the industrial application of those technology at scale. That require very, very different means. And if you see, for instance, what Vargas is doing, the Vargas holding in Sweden, with Northvolt first, and then with A2 Green Steel, they're taking a completely different approach to do that, with completely different funding round, very unreasonable level of aspiration. So if the Europe of the future is the Europe of Northvolt and H2 Green Steel, then we have a chance. But if the Europe of the future is the one where it's very difficult to fundraise a few millions to do this and fundraise, then and you have, I don't know, Italy prohibiting cultured meat and all of those things, then I see a problem. That's so the possibility is there. There are glimpses of how this could look like, but there is no certainty that this is what is going to happen.
Yeah, as always, some things heading in the right direction and other things heading in the completely wrong direction.
Yes.
How far along in the journey are you? Because that's obviously quite fascinating, but also quite ambitious to change that on an industrial level globally. How far along in the journey are you?
We just got started. We have an incredible team, and this is, for instance, something that I'm quite proud about, because out of the team, I'm managing to bring people back from Silicon Valley and the West Coast to Europe to operate and work in Europe. I'm doing this. I'm just in the process of hiring somebody and having him moving from Brooklyn to Venice. So really just going in the opposite direction. And the reason why we can do that is because we're tapping into the industrial backbone of Northern Italy, where we can do things at the speed and at the price that would be unthinkable in the US. So this is my hope. This is where we are today. So we are getting started. We are operating mostly out of Europe, bringing talent out of the US. And we just fundraised the first round and in the process of deploying that. And we're going to have the first bioreactors in Italy end of Q1, early Q2 2024, which I think is a decent pace, and having all the industrial space being set up there with our industrial partners. So
great. Sounds like it's going to be a very exciting year for you, the new year.
That's for sure.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on getting started already, because that's sometimes the hard part. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights on the strengths of Europe, but also the weaknesses. Thank you for being so transparent about that. Massimo, wish you all the best with Arsenale, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.